Welcome back to the channel, you guys. It is me, Justin Rocco here. Very excited to be bringing you guys this video here today. Gonna be doing a little something different on the channel. A season 1 Sopranos review. Really just kind of gonna go, episode by episode, and then I'll talk about the season, as a whole throughout. But really, yeah, I've been meaning to make content on this show. I'm really enjoying it. Just finished up season 1 just a couple of days ago, and then I started season 2. I am on episode 5 of season 2. And yeah, man, I can definitely see the hype. I can definitely see why, this is regarded as one of the best shows of all time. The acting in it is just, it's amazing. The casting is even better. And yeah, I've really been enjoying it. Definitely been wanting to make some content on it. So here we are today. Like I said, just kind of wanted to go through, give my overall, opinion on each episode and then the season as a whole. So we'll just start out with the pilot, obviously. With this show, what I'm seeing all throughout season 1, really, and all throughout the show, I'm really just gonna guess on that, is family relationships. That's definitely the theme of season 1. Even just, in the first episode, they really make that a point to show you, how many problems he's really just dealing with his internal family. His mother, she refuses to go into a nursing home. She is just very stubborn. She's very manipulative, and, she doesn't have the best intentions. His daughter is, rebelling against her parents, teenage girl, teenage boy things, whatever. And then his son, all throughout the season, is getting in trouble in school, and, different stuff like that. Just kind of how it is when you're raising, young children. And then obviously he has, kind of a, I don't want to say strange relationship with his wife, but, she knows about his activities. He knows that she knows. So it's always kind of just looming there, that kind of, that fulfillment for more that you can tell that, Carmela wants, and, probably will just never get, to be a normal family. But yeah, we see this all throughout the season. She feels some type of guilt. She is seeing a family priest to help her with this, and this is a recurring theme throughout the season. But the main premise in episode 1 is that Uncle Junior wants to perform a hit on Little Pussy in Artie Bucco's restaurant. Artie Bucco is a character introduced who is a childhood friend of Tony's, and Tony really does not like this idea at all. He thinks Artie's restaurant, should just be off limits. No mob activity there, especially no murders there. It's just not something that he wants to take place in his friend's restaurant. And one of the most comedic, funniest lines of season 1 happens because of this.
You kill him someplace else.
You may run North Jersey, but you don't run your Uncle Junior. How many fucking hours did I spend playing catch with you?
Uncle Junior really is one of my favorite characters this season, man. Just how he delivers his lines all throughout the season. It's just really funny to me. I love his presence when he's on screen, obviously. The relationship between him and Tony is a little complicated, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But yeah, what Tony deals with this episode also is he's having these panic attacks. So he goes to see a shrink, and that's obviously very uncommon for a huge mobster like himself. They're kind of supposed to put on this front. They're not supposed to be, emotional, or, they're not supposed to have anxiety attacks and stuff. So this comes off as, unnormal for a guy like Tony. But yeah, that's pretty much the main premise. The first 2 episodes really is him going to, see this shrink, express his feelings, and he comes to realize that it really is helping him talk to a psychiatrist. It does help him, with his anxiety, and really just with his own head. In episode 2, we see one of my favorite characters Christopher Moltisanti take on a larger role. Him and his friend, his buddy that he's kind of trying to get introduced to the mob life, Brendan Filoni, have started to hijack trucks. And an incident happens where they hijack one of the trucks that Junior Soprano actually runs, or who he's being paid by. And, this pisses Junior off. So this is kind of the first time where we see him and Tony kind of butt heads. And, they kind of start this tug of war of, just back and forth. You do this to me, I'll do this to you, etc., etc. And we also see in this episode that Christopher is addicted to drugs. He's on cocaine. He uses crystal meth. He, smokes weed. He does all this different stuff. So, part of me feels that that's going to come back, in later seasons and later episodes. But yeah, that's really the big conflict in this episode also. So there is a subplot where Anthony Jr.'s teacher, his science teacher's car, gets stolen. So Tony takes it upon himself to get him a new car. And they are very confused when they get his car back. The paint's still wet. The interior is like a different color. And the key is like a whole different key. But that's kind of all that we really get from that. And then Tony's also dealing with his mother. She starts a fire in her house. And, it's really starting to look like, she can't live on her own. She is going to need some extra support. So Tony's trying to figure all that out also. And at therapy, he's talking about his mother. And, in his head, he kind of knows that, she's pretty manipulative. She's very manipulative. And Dr. Melfi is trying to kind of convince him of this, but he's kind of in denial. And he doesn't really want to accept the burden that his mother is really putting on him. In episode 3, we are shown acting boss of the DeMeo family, Jackie Aprile, in the hospital. All the guys come to see him while he's terminally ill with cancer in the hospital. It's here that we learn Silvio brings up a conflict with the Jewish family. There's a Jewish business owner who wants his daughter to get a divorce from a Jewish hotel owner, Shlomo. He's offering 25% to Tony if he can get him to divorce his daughter with no compensation. But you kind of come to find out that Shlomo kind of helped the father, shape his business and kind of make it what it is today. You kind of feel, a little bit bad for the guy, but in the end, he kind of just gets screwed by the DeMeo family. But there is a few comedic moments with Paulie and Silvio. Paulie and Silvio gotta be one of the most funniest dynamic duos on the show. When those guys are on the screen together, I just know it's probably going to be a pretty good laugh. But in therapy, Tony is talking to Dr. Melfi really just about Jackie Aprile and just talking how such a strong, well put together man can just shrivel down to nothing, after being affected by cancer. Also in this episode, Livia is put in Green Grove. She hates it there. She resents it there. But the viewer and everyone else knows that it is definitely best for her. She had a situation where she ran someone over with her car on accident. And it's really just going to show, just how old she's kind of getting and how, unstable she really is. But towards the end of the episode, Christopher's friend, Brendan Filoni, is shot and killed by Junior's right-hand man, Mikey Grabbag Paul Meese. This is due to them kind of just fucking with Junior's trucks. He really doesn't like that. So he's kind of just, sending a message almost. And then he does a mock execution to Christopher. He sends some Russians out. Christopher thinks that this is Tony getting back for him because previously, or earlier in the episode, Christopher lends Meadow some drugs. He doesn't want her getting it from anyone else but him. So he kind of figures if she's going to get it from anyone, might as well just be from me. So we kind of see, that those actions, play out. And we really kind of see how in the future Livia will be, how would you say, influencing Junior's decisions. She is in his ear, and he does listen to her, and he does, almost get played by her. So we'll see that and how that comes to fruition in the future episodes. It is in episode 4, Meadowlands, where we start to get a more of a dynamic between Tony and Dr. Melfi. It's here where he starts to grow increasingly worried about, his sessions and him visiting her. He sees Silvio right outside the office. It kind of begins to panic him, and he really just starts to think about, what he's doing, how he can kind of keep this more secretive. So he hires a crooked cop, a detective, Vin Makazian. He follows her home, and he stops her car and beats up her boyfriend or whoever was driving her car, which is just completely not what he was supposed to do. He figured he was doing Tony a favor by getting rid of this guy because he thought, she was cheating on Tony, but she's really Tony's mistress, all this, and it really just gets lost in translation. But on the other hand, Christopher is dealing with the backlash of his mock execution. He's obviously dealing with his friend who has just been shot and killed. Christopher wants to take out Mikey Palmise. He mentions to Tony. Tony kind of tells him to back off. Mikey's a made man. So Tony just goes there himself, meets Tony outside of his car, beats his ass a little bit, grabs his stapler, staples him, does whatever. And that's kind of the end of that conflict for the episode. And towards the end, we start to kind of, get answers to who will be boss after Jackie April's death. Dr. Melfi actually suggests to him the illusion of control. So this is what kind of, Tony goes through with. With Jackie April's death, someone has to become boss. It's either him or Uncle Junior. He ends up giving it to Uncle Junior, but behind the scenes, the viewers and everyone else kind of knows that Tony's the one who's really running things. All the capos listen to him. All the capos want him to become boss, but to protect his public image and to continue in therapy, he lets Junior take the reins of boss, and ultimately will let Junior take the fall of being boss. So yeah, this was a really interesting episode, and it really starts to kick off the central theme, in my opinion, of this season. The next episode is episode 5, titled College. I think that this is creator David Chase's favorite episode. He mentioned that it would stand alone well as its own, like on a standalone movie, which I agree with. But in this episode, we're kind of taken out of our natural setting of the Bada Bing, of the Soprano residence of Green Grove, and Tony is taking Meadow on a college trip in Maine to visit some of the colleges that she's thinking of attending, when he spots a former member of the DeMeo family, Febby Petrulio, who has now changed his name to Frederick Peters. Tony runs the plate, confirms it with Christopher, and it is indeed the rat, the guy that he is looking for. And actually, if you go back and you watch this episode, it is kind of a blink or miss it type of detail, but he finds him because of the presidential busts that he has in his office. They mention, him and Christopher mentioned that when he was in the can, he would make presidential busts, like, statue carvings or whatever of faces, and they have big lips. So that's how Tony actually recognizes and realizes that it is the guy that he's looking for. So Tony's kind of dealing with this back and forth with Meadow. He's kind of trying to find this guy, but he also wants to be a good father and take her on a college trip. Febby, on the other hand, though, does notice that someone has been following him because he is aware that he obviously flipped. So he kind of starts to, become aware of this and starts to kind of stalk Tony almost. On the other hand, at home, Carmela is dealing with Father Phil. He comes over and we kind of get this weird type of relationship between them. Father Phil, is a very weird guy. He's obviously not the cleanest priest in the world. He comes over to, other man's wives' houses, sleeps over there, eats their food. And really, we kind of see this all throughout season 1. It's kind of a recurring theme, that, you just kind of get the sense that he's kind of just a weird guy. At that same time, Carmela actually gets a call from Dr. Melfi, who calls the Soprano residence, and this is where Carmela realizes that she is a woman. So this will come out later in the episode, and we'll kind of see how she deals with that. But going back to the Febby Paciulio situation, he tries to get some random druggies off the street, I presume, to go after Tony because he knows that someone's after him. It comes down to it. Tony ends up going after Febby and choking him to death and killing him. We get some really nice dialogue beforehand with Meadow and Tony at the dinner table, really, when they're just kind of discussing, not secrets. I guess you could kind of say that, they're discussing things that they trust with each other. They're trying to become more honest. I see that with Tony. He's trying to not give his daughter the whole truth, but he is kind of hinting to her, yes, all my money isn't quite legal, I guess you could say. And obviously in this episode is where we get the famous "Are you in the mafia? Are you in the mafia?" line. Just a very funny moment that happens in this episode. And as this episode ends, we get a shot of Tony looking up, sitting outside one of the college's offices, and he reads a quote that says, "No man can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be true." This is just a great ending, really. I love this ending, and the look on Tony's face when he realizes that this quote is ultimately true is just great. The next episode is episode 6, Pax Soprana. And in this episode, we see Uncle Junior kind of starting to, pull his weight around a little bit. He issues a tax on Hesh. He also changes some old rules around, so more of the money will actually trickle down to him rather than his capos. Junior arranges a hit on a drug dealer who sells drugs to a 14-year-old boy, a man that Junior knows it was his grandson. So really the premise of this episode is really just Junior kind of taking the role of boss, and we kind of see how he is as boss. Livia is the one who ultimately convinces Junior to tax Hesh, even though Hesh has not been paying taxes ever since Tony's father, Johnny Boy Soprano, was around. On the other hand, the subplot of this episode is that Tony is actually having some thoughts about Dr. Melfi. He thinks that he's in love with her, but she assures him that it really is just the positive thoughts and the positive thinking that he's gaining from therapy. He's having dreams about her, he's fantasizing about having sex with her, etc. Later on in the episode, Carmela is obviously growing very jealous of this relationship, and she confesses to Tony that she wants to be the one that he kind of comes home to and expresses his feelings to. We never really see this come to fruition, though. And at the very end of this episode, we are seeing all the capos and most of the DeMeo family at a banquet to kind of just honor the life of Jackie Aprile and also welcome in Junior as the new boss. We see, though, that there are feds in disguise as servers, and ultimately they're just gathering information as this banquet goes on, they're taking pictures with the name tags on their uniforms and such. And at the end of the episode, we see Junior Soprano being moved from capo to boss of the family. So this really puts the target on Junior's back. But we, the audience, know that Tony is the real boss.
It's nice here.
You can't stand the smell. Shit flies all over the place. But I could stay in there for hours and watch them run around. There's a kind of beauty to it.
I envy them.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would. I got no bills, no headaches, no family cotsies running around. One horse likes another horse, they go up to each other, they fuck. That's it. No problems, no 100 questions, no guilt. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Episode 7, titled Down Neck, is a interesting episode to me. It's not a filler episode, I wouldn't say, but it kind of has that type of feeling to it almost. We open up the episode, AJ's getting in trouble at school for drinking some Sacramento wine. Quite a funny scene, actually. And then at the dinner table, Uncle Junior makes a funny remark also to Anthony Jr. And here we have Livia, bringing up Tony, his past as a kid. And, he mentions at the dinner table how he wants no talk of that. He wants no reference of that. Obviously symbolizing and showing us that he really doesn't want his kids to follow in his footsteps. There is a subplot in the episode that Anthony Jr. may have ADD. They kind of deal with that and kind of just call BS on that in the end. It is also in this episode where we see flashbacks of Tony as a kid. He sees his father beating a man up who owes him money, and he recalls, feeling a great sense of pride due to this. He tells this to Dr. Melfi, and they kind of really just discuss this, and he thinks back to his Uncle Junior. We get more references to them playing ball as kids, or as a kid, and obviously Junior's an adult. But AJ overhears Tony and Carmela talking about the therapy, and this is where shit really does start to go downhill. AJ mentions to Livia about the psychiatrist. Obviously, in the mall life, this is a huge no-no. Huge mistake on AJ's part to let Livia know about this. Just due to how manipulative and, how much information that she can give to Junior. We see here in this episode in Tony's flashback that he was jealous of his sister due to the fact that he thought that his dad was taking her to the, what would it be? It's like a circus or like a fair of sorts. For her to go and, play around with all of her friends. But really it ends up being just a front to where all the mobsters take their daughters to ultimately just discuss business. And it's in this episode where we see how Tony idolized his father and kind of, did follow in his footsteps, and just how much influence that he really did have on Tony's life. The Legend of Tennessee Moltisanti is one of my favorite episodes this season. It centers around really Christopher's character and Tony and Dr. Melfi's relationship. So, during the beginning of the episode, indictments are being talked of. The guys are talking about spring cleaning. They want to get rid of all their evidence, get rid of all of their cash and guns and anything that would be illegal. They are sending people out to search for bugs in the Bada Bing restaurant. Pussy and his wife burn all this stuff, and it is here where we get Christopher's storyline, I guess you could say. He's feeling very depressed and very scared of what he has done. In the first episode, we see him kill Emil Kolar, and he's consistently having nightmares and thoughts about this. So much that he actually goes and digs up the body. He's really just kind of losing it here. And this is where he actually begins to write a screenplay based on the Mafia, actually. And it's here where we get one of my favorite interactions of all of season 1 between him and Paulie. Christopher's asking, "Where's my arc?" And all of these storybooks, they have an arc. Something happens to someone, their life changes. And, Paulie mentions, "Hey, I'm here, I'm living, I'm surviving." Christopher goes, "No, I don't want to just survive. That's the thing. I want to live. I want to do more." So it's here where you begin to see Christopher wants more with his life. He's not how would you say, content with how he's living right now. He wants more. He wants to do more. He wants to be more with his life. But as we see, drugs and other things kind of hold him back. He holds himself back almost. And it's very interesting to see in this episode. There's a conflict between Tony and Dr. Melfi. Tony had mentioned before that he was probably going to be missing his next appointment. And Dr. Melfi charges him for this anyways. Which, I could see both sides of the argument. But it's here where Tony begins to throw money on Dr. Melfi, and he's cursing at her, and really just creates this big scene, and it starts to create a sort of fearful, relationship between Dr. Melfi and Tony. Christopher then shoots a store clerk in the foot just due to his mental state and how he's feeling. Then Junior visits Livia at Green Grove. It's here where she reveals that Tony's seeing a psychiatrist. This is obviously a very huge deal and will really just start to spiral down and create a huge conflict by the end of the season. But at the very end of this episode, Christopher gets a call from his mother and tells him that he's in the newspaper, featured in an article about the Mafia. He goes there, buys every single paper. He's so happy to hear this, just to get some recognition and to, be seen. And he loves this. And it's really what he was desiring this whole episode. So it was kind of a nice ending here to a very interesting episode. Episode 9, titled Boca, revolves around two major storylines in this episode. The first is Junior and his longtime girlfriend Bobby are planning a trip to go to Boca, and they do go to Boca. Junior has a residence down there. He's just trying to get away from all the indictment talk, all of the, federal indictments that are supposed to be coming down, and he's really just getting away and trying to do his own thing. But Bobby has quite the mouth on her, and we'll figure out what happens towards the end of the episode. On the other hand, Meadow is playing soccer along with Silvio's daughter and Artie's daughter, and these guys love this coach. He is, taking them to state championships. He's a hard coach, but he's a winner, and he knows, the game of soccer. But come to find out, he's actually a sicko who is having a sexual relationship with one of the girls on the team. So he actually takes another job at a different college, and everyone is pretty upset about this. And everyone assumes that the girls are all upset about this because he's leaving, but it's actually revealed that it is because of his relationship with Allie, one of Meadow's friends. Obviously, this enrages Tony and the whole crew. They want to kill Coach Hauser, but really Meadow does not want him to do this. She wants him to stay out of it. She wants the cops to be involved. So we see that situation kind of play out. There's a really funny scene with Paulie when he shows up to Coach Hauser's house with a new flat screen HD TV. And he says that his name is Clarence. Go check that out. Again, if you haven't. Again, Paulie really is one of my favorite characters on the show. He's constantly just making me laugh. But On the other hand, Junior is dealing with Bobby and Boca. It is revealed that he does something in the bedroom that is kind of taboo in Italian culture. He performs oral sex on her, so this starts to go around, and it just keeps going around. She's telling people about this at the nail salon, and it ends up coming back to Carmela, who ends up telling Tony. And then obviously we get that famous scene of Tony teasing Junior at the golf course, the South of the border jokes, and all that, which infuriates Junior. And really he sees this as a huge sign of disrespect, which kind of fuels more and more, his idea of killing Tony, getting rid of Tony. And obviously Mikey wants this too, as Junior's right-hand man. Tony talks to Dr. Melfi about the soccer coach situation, and it is here where we see, or after where we see, him contemplating whether or not he should kill the coach or kind of let the cops do their thing. In the end, he does let the cops handle it. He does not hurt Coach Hauser, and he has a great line at the end of the episode, of where he tells Carmela that the town's gonna give the shrink a bonus because he didn't hurt nobody. And I just love that line. The writers of this show really did their thing with this episode. This episode is great. And then we come back to Uncle Junior, who obviously ends up finding out about Bobby and how she just tells everybody their business, even though he directly told her to keep her mouth shut about it. He ends up going to punch her, kind of settles down and smashes a lemon meringue pie in her face instead. One of the funnier scenes in the season also. And there is a great interaction in this episode with Junior and Mikey that I'll put in this video. Episode 10, A Hit is a Hit, is an interesting episode. I'm going to be completely honest, this is probably one of my least favorite episodes of this season, if not my least favorite. There's really no particular reason, but I feel like this episode kind of has the least amount of impact or, less of an overarching storyline. It focuses on a rapper that Christopher actually runs into, who he sets up a meeting with Hesh. Between him and this rapper, Massive Genius. Massive Genius is actually seeking money from Hesh due to a song that Hesh released back in the day that was one of the affiliates of the Massive Genius crew. Obviously, this was years and years ago. So Christopher and Adriana go to this party to meet up with Massive Genius. Overall, they set up a meeting with Massive Genius and Hesh. They kind of, talk this out. Hesh pretty much tells him that he's not going to pay him shit, so Massive Genius says that he's going to get a lawyer involved. The Soprano crew is kind of like taken aside by this, I guess you could say, because, they're thinking to themselves, oh, this guy's a big gangster, but yet he's going to get the law involved. So it just goes to show, how times are kind of just changing. It's here where there's a side plot with Tony and his neighbor, Dr. Bruce Cusamano. Mr. Cusamano is the guy who referred Tony to Dr. Melfi. So Tony gives him a box of cigars, kind of just as a thank you. And Cusamano does know Tony's affiliations with the mob life. Everyone kind of knows, but they kind of put it aside as they're almost fearful of Tony. It's here where Tony accepts an invitation to go golfing with Bruce Cusamano and all of his friends at the country club. Here we get this kind of, awkward interaction between Tony and all of these middle-aged white guys who are the exact, stereotype of what you would think a rich middle-aged white guy would act around, a guy who's supposedly a huge mobster. They're flooding him with all these dumb questions. They're like, almost entertained by him and almost like fanboying over him in a way, to where it's just kind of cringy, and it really is acted very well, because it's a totally believable situation. You know, some guys of their stature, I could definitely see, you know, acting that way. Tony talks to Dr. Melfi about this and how he feels like he's just being used for entertainment by those guys. And he really does not feel good about this. On the other hand, Christopher is trying to get Adriana involved a little bit in I guess you could say her own little niche or whatever. They came across all of that money in the beginning of the episode due to that hit that they performed. So he's kind of trying to give her shot almost, it seems like to me. And she just picks this absolutely egregious band. Some guy that she used to date is the lead singer. And she decides to promote them and try to get them a record deal. So Christopher takes this CD to Hesh, and Hesh pretty much tells him that it's garbage. It's really bad. And Christopher is kind of sitting there, you know, contemplating what he should do. And it ends with Adriana just getting pretty pissed at Christopher. The next episode is episode 11, titled Nobody Knows Anything. In the beginning of this episode, we are shown or seen that the corrupt police officer, Vin Makazian, provides Tony with inside information that Big Pussy seems to be an FBI informant. We later learn that Makazian actually owes Pussy $30,000, which, you know, is kind of clouding Tony's judgment. You know, obviously he just found out that one of his best friends may be an informant. He's kind of going crazy over this. He doesn't really know what to think. Tony asks him to bring in a copy of the police report, but before he can do that, the detective, Makazian, is actually busted at a brothel. And then ultimately after that commits suicide. He jumps off of a bridge. So we really never get the true answer that Tony was looking for. We see also in the beginning of the episode, there is a pool hall that is being broken into by FBI. Jimmy and Big Pussy are both in there. They both run out. Pussy has been complaining about his back, and it is just getting worse and worse. They find a whole shit ton of guns in the pool hall that they were staying in, but both men end up getting out of jail pretty quickly, almost too quickly, and we'll see how that plays out later in the episode. It is here where they begin to question Pussy. Tony sends Paulie out to try and search for a wire on him. They take him to like this hot tub type of sauna area. He's trying to get him to take his clothes off, but he refuses. This is where, we start to have conflicting thoughts about Pussy. We, the audience, start to think that he really is the rat, and he very well could be. So next we see Tony talking to Dr. Melfi about Pussy and about, his condition. He starts to question if Pussy's back really does hurt or if he's just kind of using this as an excuse. She mentions to Tony that his condition could be psychosomatic, which means just, all in your head from stress and stuff. Junior then meets up with Livia, who reveals to Junior that all of the capos have been meeting at Green Grove behind Junior's back. Junior's obviously still pretty mad about Tony for the disrespect in the Boca episode and really just all the previous events that they've been kind of, butting heads about. Junior is feeling quite a bit of disrespect from Tony after Jackie April's death, and he organizes a hit to be put on Tony with Mikey. And then we get the scene of Jimmy being released from jail, and he shows up to Tony's house, and he starts to ask Tony a lot of questions. It's here where we begin the shift of Jimmy being the rat. He's asking Tony all of these weird questions, what he's going to do with the money from the hit, and, all of these just out of the ordinary, weird questions that Tony begins to pick up on. We get a great scene after this between Tony and Paulie, where Tony makes Paulie swear to him that he didn't touch Big Pussy. And it's here that Tony reveals to the rest of the guys that Jimmy is indeed the rat. At this point, Pussy is still missing, and they have now shifted their focus to Jimmy being the rat.
It's Jimmy. It's fucking Jimmy.
What?
The Wire. It's fucking Jimmy.
What are you talking about?
The Wire. You understand The Wire? It's fucking Jimmy.
Episode 12, titled Isabella, is definitely one of the more exciting episodes in this season. It is here where we begin the episode at one of Junior's childhood friend's funeral. Junior is obviously very, very, very nervous about the hit that is going to go down on Tony. We've seen all throughout the season the relationship between Tony and Junior, and you really do get this feeling that Junior does love Tony, and he does have, a certain respect for Tony, but he's kind of just done with his shit. He's done with his he's kind of messing with Junior. He's going behind his back, so Junior has decided to try and put an end to it. At the funeral, Mikey Paul Meese is discussing this hit with Junior. Junior is just in denial about it. He wants nothing to do, with it. He doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to think about it. Get some really funny lines of dialogue where Junior mentions how they would always have baseball cards as a kid, and getting the cool Joe DiMaggio card was always the best, but they never exchanged Jesus cards. I don't know. It's just a really funny scene to go back and watch. But they finished their scheme of the hit on Tony. They hired two thugs, I would say, hitmen, or however you want to put it, to go ahead and try and kill Tony. It's here where we see Tony enter the donut shop to get to Dr. Melfi's office, but Christopher is also following Tony. He is, kind of concerned about Tony's mental health, and he doesn't want Tony to, kill himself or do something to harm himself. They fail the hit due to just people around, and it's a public area. They couldn't get it done that day, and then there is a short little scene where a man jokes about Junior and Livia and Tony's relationship. Mikey, showing his loyalty to Junior, just straight up pops the guy in his car, and that's that. The next day is where they attempt the hit again. Obviously, it is unsuccessful. Tony ends up killing one of the guys, and the other is brutally injured. It's almost as if this hit almost awoken Tony, or, showed him that he does have something worth living for. He mentions a line along those lines towards the end of this episode. After the failed hit, Tony crashes his car and ends up in a hospital. FBI agents show up, offering immunity to testify against the DeMeo family, but Tony denies and tells them that it was just a carjacking, which we the viewer and Tony also knows is not true. Silvio and Paulie come to visit Tony in the hospital, and we get a kind of different type of mood from this, because they seem serious to me. When I was watching it, they come to the hospital, they're not really joking around, they're pretty serious. One of their guys was almost murdered. So it's a very serious situation, and Silvio, Paulie, and Christopher start to suspect that it was Junior behind the hit, and after this, Livia and Junior actually show up to Tony's house just to, relieve any suspicion that it was them. Livia begins scheming. She is acting like she has dementia. She acts like she does not know who Meadow is, to avoid any suspicion that she was involved in this hit. So if Tony were to ever confront her, she could just act like she's deranged. She could act like she has dementia. And really, that woman is very evil. She is, and we see it here in this episode. Her and Junior tried to kill their own son and their own nephew, which is crazy. But the other huge plot in this episode that happens before this is that Tony is seeing visions of an Isabella the house across from him, or next door. We come to find out that this all was just an illusion, and it all was in Tony's mind. Dr. Melfi identifies this as a side effect of the lithium, and it is here where we get a dream that Tony sees of Isabella nurturing a baby boy, and Dr. Melfi actually identifies this as being, kind of like a mother figure to Tony. And he's wishing that he had that caring, loving mother that he thought that he had, but he actually is coming to realize that he definitely doesn't have, and that it's the complete opposite. Dr. Melfi asks Tony if he has anything else to worry about right now, and Tony replies that he is fine, but he'll be even better when he realizes who organized the hit. So that's the main premise of this episode. He's trying to figure out who put the hit on him, and he will figure that out next episode. I Dream of Jeannie Cusamano is the final episode of Season 1, the 13th episode, and it opens up with Junior giving Tony the blessing to go ahead and whack Jimmy. They noticed that Jimmy was asking questions about things that they had already discussed. He called a meeting about things that were already previously established. So they all know that Jimmy is a rat. Christopher takes Jimmy back to a hotel where Silvio shoots him in the back of the head. They call him a rat beforehand, and Jimmy just kind of lets out a, "Oh God," so you kind of know that Jimmy is indeed a rat. That reaction just tells me surely that no doubt he's a rat, and that's that. So we go to the next scene where Meadow is in the house with a boy. AJ is also in the house, where Livia walks in from Green Grove, acting like she has dementia. She's speaking about dead relatives, and she's really just seeming like she's losing it. Obviously, like I previously mentioned, this is due to her not wanting to have any suspicion in Tony's hit. She really is a manipulative old lady. Tony then goes to see Dr. Melfi to talk about this hit on his life, and it is here where Melfi actually kind of, suggests to Tony that his mother may have had something to do with this. Tony rages out at this. He hates this idea that his mother would do something like this, to her own child. So he storms out, but in the back of his mind, you get that idea that he does kind of know that his mother was involved in this some way. Artie, on the other hand, goes to visit Livia. It is here where she reveals to Artie that Tony actually burned down the restaurant himself. Artie is in disbelief about this, but he does end up taking Livia's word for it. He goes to confront Tony, but at the same time, Artie knows that if he were to go to the police about this, his new thriving restaurant would all come to a halt, and he'd never really get closure or satisfaction for what happened to his restaurant. Next, it is here where we see a very, very, very important scene in this episode, where FBI agents actually take Tony to the side and show him these tapings of the wiretaps between Livia and Junior about the hit, discussing the hit on Tony. It's revealed that Livia definitely 100% had a hand in this, and it's here where Tony realizes this. He goes back to Dr. Melfi's office, and he apologizes to her. He tells her that she was definitely right about Livia, his mother, but he also tells her that she needs to leave town for a few weeks due to just the investigation, the ongoing investigation, and everything that's going on. Tony admits to everyone else that he is seeing a psychiatrist. He tells Silvio and Paulie and Christopher. Christopher is pretty upset about this, rightfully so. But it is then revealed that Paulie was seeing a shrink himself. Just a nice scene there, in my opinion, because I really like seeing the loyalty between those four guys. You really do get the sense that those are going to be the four guys that kind of stick through it throughout the whole series. At least I hope so, especially Paulie and Silvio. But anyways, we get a weird little subplot again with Father Phil. He is comforting Jackie April's widow, and why am I forgetting her name? Carmela sees this and starts to get quite jealous. And she kind of tells Father Phil off in a right way, in my opinion. I mean, she was pretty spot on about Father Phil, about the food and about the mob wives and, etc. Then we start to see the fall of Junior Soprano's crew. They go out and they murder Mikey while he's running. Christopher ends up getting his payback for his friend Brendan's death and ends up murdering Mikey. And then next, it is here where right before Tony can tell the guys to go ahead and whack Junior, the rest of the guys are actually arrested before they can do that and taken into custody for running a stock fraud scam, actually, that Tony was not tied to. So now pretty much the only thing that Tony worries about is these guys on the inside potentially flipping. Junior is then seen, we see Junior talking to an FBI agent while he's, in prison. And if Junior was to just admit that it was Tony all along that was really running the family, that Junior would get a less sentence and be able to be free. But Junior cannot do this. He has too much pride for this, and he waited too long for Boss to just give that up. So he does not flip on Tony, and he tells the FBI agent that it was all him all along, that he was and is the acting boss. Then we see Tony at Green Grove pick up a pillow, and it looks like he's going to go and try and suffocate Livia. It's a pretty intense scene. Tony then gets in the face of Livia, tells her that, he knows everything that she's done, gets in her face. It really is a disturbing, almost, crazy scene that we witness. Tony just letting out his true feelings and finally telling his mother, just how much he really despises her and how he knows that it was her plan all along. Livia then smiles as she's being carted away. Again, we see her evilness. And then the final scenes of this episode are in Artie Bucco's restaurant. Tony and Artie speak about, their conflict, and they kind of settle down about it. Adriana has been hired by the restaurant as a waitress. Silvio's eating at the restaurant. Paulie and Chris are eating. And the family just kind of sits down, and we really get to see almost the perspective of a normal family who's just kind of sitting down. At the end of the day, Tony raises his glass and mentions to his family about the little moments that they must remember. And it really is a great ending to a great episode, and just the season in general, really. I loved it. I love this season. I love how it ended. With Junior, everything was great. How they get rid of his crew and how Tony ends up confronting his mother. I love the closure he got on that. Christopher ends up getting closure, or not closure, but, you know, his revenge for Brendan. But the one thing is Pussy is still missing. So we will have to see, you know, how that ends up in the next season. So yeah, guys, that was my review of The Sopranos Season 1. It was way longer than I thought it was, just because I ended up talking about each individual episode for about 3 to 4 minutes longer than I was expecting. But I ended up getting, you know, really into it. I really enjoyed doing this. Again, this is one of the best seasons of television that I've ever seen. It's probably the best season 1 of television that I've ever seen. Undoubtedly. I mean, the actors, the acting in this season, it's all just an A+ for me. You know, there was like one episode where I wasn't like fully engaged in it, but that's about it. I mean, everything else was just a positive. I can definitely see why, you know, this is regarded as one of the best shows of all time. And I'm so excited to, you know, further my watching experience and further, you know, just my fandom into this series. I appreciate each and every one of you guys that came out and listened to me, listened to my opinions. I really do like, you know, talking about things that I'm enjoying at this current moment. And this show is definitely one of them. If you guys haven't checked it out, go ahead, check it out. I love it so far, and I can't wait to talk about it some more. I appreciate all you guys watching this video. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
You fucking run off at the mouth, you know that?